mentioned we need to make sure that we get the 3 votes to pass it. And you would think, well, that should be a natural, and it should be. But we don't take things like that for granted. It's a democratic process. People want to know who cares about that in the community, people on my board. So if you have an opportunity, I know there's a petition right over here, but you can talk about how to email in, how to sign up for support or whatever. What I want you to know is we're doing our part and we're accelerating our efforts on climate all the time here in Santa Clara County. But this is going to be a template that is more than symbolic for the entire country, and it's going to go forward globally. And I guarantee you that, and I guarantee you by the middle of next month, you'll be hearing more about that. But first we need to get our own resolution passed. We have been asked at a national level to lead not only the country, but to lead globally on this issue. People want to say in Silicon Valley and Santa Clara County, they have adopted this resolution first. They have declared a climate emergency, and if we knit together counties and cities, not just in this country, but across the world, it doesn't matter what Donald Trump does, because we do the implementing here, at least on climate. It matters what he does, but it doesn't matter what he does on climate if we do this work here. So I didn't want to make a real serious speech today. I hope that's more inspiring. It doesn't feel like I'm putting you to work on a day when we're having a beautiful day, a beautiful picnic out here, and great food. But I did want to thank you, and I did want to let you know that we haven't let up at all. We won't let up at all. I intend to squeeze every bit of policy opportunity out of my remaining time on the Board of Supervisors, and then land on my feet running in the State Senate. Thank you very, very much.
Parking right now, and he'll be with us shortly. So I thought while we were waiting for him to arrive, maybe we would let Jenny Bradanini and Matt Mahan come up and each talk for a couple of minutes about their campaign for City Council. So let's greet them warmly. Who wants to go first? You're going to let Jenny.
When Jenny had a mouthful of food.
Sorry, but you look beautiful anyway.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Higgins Bradanini. Is that I need to make it here. I'll hold it up like this because I'm taller. And I live actually right here in District 10. I've lived here for the past 20 years. I raised my children here. I bought my first house here. I had a small business here and was the first employee of a startup here. So I'm really vested in this community. And a couple of the things that are really important to you, I know a lot of my neighbors have said the same, is our safety. Personally, I just had my car stolen out of my driveway, so I firsthand experienced it, why I was home actually. And the other issue that I know that is near and dear to a lot of our hearts here is the housing crisis and our homeless issues. And what we need to do is we need to do it faster, we need to be more creative, and we need to get it done now. So I want to run for City Council because I really believe that local government matters. It's where real change happens. I had an experience of working at City Hall for a year with former council member Don Rocha. So I had a chance to see what really worked and what really didn't work. And we need to build a more cohesive council, and that's one of the things that I plan on doing. So I would appreciate your support, any of my District 10 friends and neighbors, and anyone not in District 10 that wants to come out and walk for us. We're ready and willing for you. Thank you for your time.
Meet all of you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. Jenny and I are running a friendly campaign as the only two Democrats in this race, running against another registered Republican. So, somewhat similarly, I'm really running to ensure that San Jose continues to be a city full of opportunity for a large and diverse middle class. I think that the battle for the future of the American middle class is going to be won or lost in cities like San Jose, and it's going to come down to whether or not we build the housing, the affordable housing that people need to be able to stay here. We continue to be a great job center, and we invest in our neighborhoods, in the public safety, in parks, libraries, maintaining our open space, and really continuing to have thriving neighborhoods, which is why so many of us love San Jose and have chosen to call it home and raise families here. So my wife and I live just a few blocks away. We're raising our daughter and have a son on the way. And so we're very invested in the future of this city, and on the point that the supervisor made, really committed to principles of sustainability, protecting open space, and ensuring that as the city grows that it makes room for everyone, and really uses smart, dense infill, near transit, creating walkable space, and building the kind of city that we all want to live in. It is a city that can make room for everyone and be sustainable into the future. So thanks again for the opportunity. Look forward to getting to know more of you over the coming months. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Swing Left, which is going to talk about their campaigns and how all of you can be of help.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I really appreciate it. Okay, I get right up to the mic. Okay, so thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Patrick Dill. I'm with South Bay Swing Left. Swing Left is an all-volunteer national organization. Our goals last quarter, just a couple years ago, was to take the House. We targeted seven seats in this state, and we won 7 districts in this state. Nationally, we targeted 64, and nationally, we won 40. So this is what we've been doing. A year ago today, sitting right where you're at, you were less than 60 minutes from a Republican district. I am proud to show today that you'll have to drive about 3.5 hours to get to a Republican district. That's what the kind of change we're trying to do. So what are we doing going forward for 2020? 2020, we are going to hold and keep these 40 House district seats that we won just a few months ago. We're going to keep those seats. But in addition, we also want to take, and we're focusing on 6 Senate states. 6 of them. We need 4 if we take the White House. Well, if we don't take the White House, we need 4. If we do take the White House, we need 3. So these are really important for us. And how are we going to do that? So we can register voters remotely sitting right here in California. And there's about 6 states that really matter. It is Maine, it is Colorado, it is Arizona, it is North Carolina, it is Georgia, and it is Texas. Those are our 6 states that we're focusing on. And we can register those voters here. Now you might want to say, why do we have to register new voters? Why don't we just go after voters that are already registered? Well, the Pew Research Center and most of the turnout is going to tell us that the voter turnout will be at about 90 to 95%. Just like it was in 2018. We just had the highest voter turnout in the last 100 years. So that means reaching that small sliver of voters that are registered but are not voting will be very hard. What'll be much easier is reaching the 40% of the people who are not participating at all. Those are the voters we need to reach going forward. So that's what our plan is going forward, and I really hope you join me. We have some flyers on our table here, so please stop by. And we have meetings. So we meet every month at 1955 V Alameda, and we are meeting at 11 a.m. The first Saturday of every month. We register voters remotely. We've been doing this since February, so please join us. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anusha Kundaparty. I am a delegate for the California Democratic Party, AD 28. I'm here today because I want to introduce, I'm honored and ecstatic to be introducing Congressman Ro Khanna today. He is proud to serve as a representative for California's 17th district, and Ro was elected to his first term in Congress in 2016. As first vice chair of the House Progressive Caucus, Ro has stood at the vanguard of national progressive politics, serving as the co-chair of Sanders' presidential campaign, while remaining committed to bipartisan problem solving in Washington, passing 2 bills into law during his first term. And as a congressman, Ro has passed the historic War Powers Act to end U.S. involvement in Yemen, has founded the No PAC Caucus advocated Senator Sanders' college affordability bill and acted as one of the most vocal champions for the Medicare for All in the House. On the House Armed Services Committee, Ro has fought back against special interests and their monopolistic behavior, tackling private companies that gouge from defense budgets and jack up the cost for our national security. Ro has been an amazing congressman, and we are proud and honored to have him here today. And having been a former intern for Congressman Ro Khanna, I think it's a pleasure to be here today. And thank you so much, Congressman. And let's give him a warm, warm welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for your passion, your leadership, your public service. And I know you have an incredible future. Let's give Anusha a round of applause. And thank you to Jenny for helping organize this event, and to Michelle Dauber and all of the energy of the Silicon Valley Democratic Club. I am very excited and appreciate how much you have done to build the club, and thank you to everyone for coming out today and supporting the club in its mission. I don't want to give a long speech. I want to first thank you for everything that you are doing at this incredibly critical moment in time for our country. I can't think of a time where political activism and the stakes matter more than what we're facing right now as a nation. To see everything that this country has tried to build over the last 60, 70 years be under assault is mind-boggling to me. I mean, I never thought that we would have a president going to the G7 and have the entire country wondering whether he was going to embarrass, or she was going to embarrass, or he, in this case, embarrass the United States of America. I mean, we literally have a sense where we've gone from being a nation whose leadership was respected to now not knowing whether the president is going to say something outrageous on Twitter or on television that is going to cause an international incident. We have gone from building the post-World War II world in multilateral institutions. By the way, all these people who are attacking multilateral institutions, the UN and NATO, America built all of these. I mean, we built all of these because we believed that world stability and peace were in our interest, that we had the most to lose. Being the richest country, being the most prosperous country, that we wanted stability and peace. And now it's our president, more than any leader of the industrialized world, who is trying to blow up everything that this country has tried to build. I mean, launching off the coast a missile test, getting out of the INF agreement that President Reagan negotiated. It wasn't some liberal Democrat who negotiated it. He is ripping up agreements that conservative Republicans have negotiated. So the international instability that he has caused and the risk that he has caused of international incidents is extraordinary. And then domestically, of course, he's tearing this country apart. Every day, tearing the country apart. Blaming immigrants, blaming Mexico, blaming Chinese Americans, blaming Asian Americans for the job loss and the income inequality across this country. He has no plan, no vision, no sense of here's what we're going to do for America, other than to point a finger of blame. Any problem, any economic problem, when have you heard the president say, okay, here's what we're actually going to do? What he does is he says, okay, who can I blame? Literally. I mean, every day he wakes up saying, do I blame the Fed chair and call him an enemy of the people? Do I blame the special counsel? Do I blame Nancy Pelosi? Do I blame freshman members of Congress? You know, the most absurd thing about the president attacking women of color who have been elected representatives of the United States Congress, other than the racism behind some of those attacks. The most absurd thing is that the President of the United States is attacking freshman members of Congress. I mean, think of the power differential between the President of the United States and minority women who are serving in their first term. That's the President's strategy. He doesn't have answers to these issues. He's promised the American people we were going to bring manufacturing jobs back. Didn't he tell us that? Yep. And that was what he promised when he was running around the country campaigning. We're going to have a renaissance of manufacturing. Well, guess what? The manufacturing index came out 3 days ago, and it has contracted for the first time in 10 years. Manufacturing is less than it was at any period in the last 10 years, going back to the Great Recession. And so people are saying, where are those manufacturing jobs that you promised? Where are the new good-paying jobs in rural America that you promised? And he has no answers. And so what does he do? His only recourse is to say, well, it's Jerome Powell's fault. It's the new freshman members' Congress fault. It's the Mexicans' fault. It's the Chinese fault. And that is really, what I fear is this is only going to get uglier. He's only going to get more desperate. The economic news is not going to get better because he made decisions that everyone told him were incorrect. He gave tax breaks to a sugar high to executives and landowners and real estate developers instead of putting that money into creating new industries and new jobs across America. I mean, that was his policy decision. Instead of increasing people's pocketbook for ordinary middle class Americans so they could spend it and actually grow the economy, and instead of investing in broadband and investing in an industrial new industries and creating tech hubs and manufacturing hubs across America, he went and he gave that money literally to the speculator investment class and to his real estate friends. And so now any economist would have told you, okay, that's not going to grow the economy. And it hasn't. And now we're living with the consequences of that, he's going to be incredibly desperate to blame any scapegoat he can find. So what do we have to do? Let me offer a few suggestions. First, we cannot have a circular firing squad against our own candidates. We can't do it. We're going to have to be a unified Democratic Party coming out of the nomination fight. If we're not unified, we're going to give Donald Trump a huge advantage. And I think that requires all of us to be thoughtful about how we're going about the primary. I still go on Fox News. I think we have to make our case. I was on Fox News today. That's why I'm still in a suit. And they asked me about Vice President Biden's comments about, his comments on President Obama. And I didn't criticize him. They were hoping that the chair of the Sanders campaign would go and they'd give him a soundbite. And I said, look, the vice president has a distinguished record of public service. We need to talk about the issues. And I then made the case for Senator Sanders. But I think whoever we are supporting, whether it's the vice president, whether it's Senator Warren, whether it's Senator Harris, whether it's, in my case, Bernie Sanders, we should make the affirmative case for our candidate without knocking the other candidates. Because we all are going to have to come together. The second thing we've got to do is to point out the biggest obstacle in this country for progress, even more than Donald Trump, and that's Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell. I've talked to Republicans in the Senate, and they will tell you Mitch McConnell has one mission in life. I don't understand how you grow up and you say, what I really want to do is pack the federal judiciary with conservative judges. And I don't understand how that inspires someone to seek out that sole mission. But he doesn't care about anything else. He literally doesn't. That's his only motivating passion. Like Dave Cortese is here. He's got 5 different things he cares about, right? Or people in public service, or Kansan Cho. But Mitch McConnell, if you ask him, what do you believe in? That's all he believes in. It's all he believes in. How do I get some conservative ideologue onto the federal courts? And he is the one reason that we don't have gun violence laws. I mean, it is simply because of Mitch McConnell. Even the president, I don't know how many times you've seen the president, I mean, his own instincts get the better of him when he sees these mass shootings, and he says, oh, we got to do something. We've got to have background checks. We've got to have red flag laws. And then what happens? Everyone thinks, oh, maybe there's some humanity in the White House. And then 2 days later, he walks it all back. Why? Because Mitch McConnell and the NRA have talked to him, and they say no. So we need to make sure we win back the United States Senate in 2020. And we need to get rid of the filibuster. There is no, in retrospect, I have tremendous admiration for President Obama. But the one thing I regret that we didn't do is pass things with 51 votes when we had that opportunity. The next time we've got a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, we need to make sure that we get our progressive legislation through with 51 votes, with as much possible enthusiasm and boldness as the Republicans have shown. And by the way, we need to get mobilized in 2020 around the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, I pray to God that Justice Ginsburg has a full recovery and is there for another 5-10 years. I mean, she's an American hero in terms of, she's the one justice, by the way, when you go to high schools, because I've spoken in a lot of high schools, that particularly young women know and will say, I really admire Justice Ginsburg. I mean, most people don't know who's on the Supreme Court. She's really transcended being a justice to being an icon. But our rights are under assault in this country.
Yep.
And for so long, I think, Michelle Dauber, our law professors, may know it better why we haven't been motivated to vote for the Supreme Court. When Hillary Clinton was blue in her face saying, we got to get out and vote because the Supreme Court is going to change. Yep. And for some reason, that hasn't resonated with our side. And I think it's because we've taken it for granted that a woman's right to choose and that LGBTQ equality and that rights of immigrants are going to be protected. Well, I don't know if the current situation with state after state rolling back reproductive rights, rolling back protections for the LGBTQ community, rolling back protections for immigrants, if that's not enough for us to realize that we will lose these fights for a generation, for 30 years, if we don't win this election. Think about that. If Donald Trump gets to appoint 1 or 2 more justices, we could have 5 more Democratic presidents after that. And we're going to lose to a conservative Supreme Court that's probably going to be there till the time I retire. That is what is at stake. And we've got to tell people about the urgency of that at stake is the fundamental composition of this court. And by the way, that's the conservative strategy. They understand the changing values of this country. Mm-hmm. They understand the changing demographics of this country. Mm-hmm. They've met young people just as we have. Mm-hmm. They know they're on the losing side. Yep. They know that. Yep. So what is their game plan? Their game plan is to have a counter-majoritarian Supreme Court to block the popular will. Yep. Their game plan is to have voter ID and voter suppression laws to block the popular will. It's not accidental. It's deliberate. It's their only strategy. It's their only way to hold on to change that they see coming.
Yes, sir.
And that is something that we really need to fight for in this election.
Sir.
Let me end with this point. We got to be unified. We've got to take back the Senate. We need to make sure we're maintaining and expanding on the House majority. By the way, one digression. Give yourselves a round of applause for what you did in California and winning back 7 seats in this state. I get to brag all the time. I mean, we delivered the House majority for Speaker Pelosi. And let me just say this. I've come out for the impeachment inquiry, and I know that there's disagreement, but I can tell you firsthand, Nancy Pelosi is one of the most brilliant politicians that we have had in American history. And if you don't, and I didn't know that till I got to Congress, but she understands legislation, she understands this caucus, and she understands how to stand up to President Trump. And even when I have disagreements, you know, I'm for Medicare for all, and probably, you know, and progressive on a number of issues, I have tremendous admiration and respect for her. So we need to win back, we need to expand on the House majority, but then we need to do something I think that is the hardest task. And that is we've got to start to figure out how we're going to stitch our country back together. How we're going to reinsert America's role in the world with our values. The damage is so deep. And the damage, if we're being honest, didn't just start with Donald Trump. He just lit a match at damage that had been going on for the last 30 to 40 years. You see, because as there was so much innovation and success happening in certain pockets of the country, we did not pay enough attention to the deindustrialization of communities in different parts of America. We didn't pay enough attention to people who said the American dream was slipping by and who didn't have that hope for their children. And the divides exacerbated. And at a time where technology is changing so much of the world, at a time where globalization is changing so much of the world, people are more rooted to place than ever before. It's the one thing they have. They want to live in the communities often that they grew up in. It's the one part that's not changing. And yet what we see is the zip code that you grow up in is determinative in so many ways of your future. Yes. We need to change that. We need to, as a party, say we hear communities that have been left out. And we're going to have a new commitment to unify and bring this country together, not through sheer eloquence, not through sheer inspiration, but being deliberate about bringing new jobs, new industry, new economic opportunity to communities that have been left behind. We have got to convince people in every part of this country that the future is not something to be feared. I was in Beckley, West Virginia, and the most popular teacher was a Pakistani American with a thick accent who was teaching computer science to coal miners' kids. You see, if people have economic opportunity, if they are convinced that the future is going to mean more jobs, more prosperity, more money, more options, more diversification of choice for their communities, then they will embrace the diversity that comes along with it. But if they think that the future is something to be feared, then they will cling to what Donald Trump is selling them. My friends, we have a harder task. We have a harder task than being a Republican or a conservative. It's why we tend to elect brilliant people like Barack Obama or Bill Clinton to the presidency, because you almost have to be brilliant to win on our side. You don't have to be brilliant as a conservative. If your message is, look, I just want to keep the same thing going, that's not a hard message to sell. If your message is, I'm going to blame the other for your problems, that's not a hard message to sell. But if what you're trying to say is the country and the world are changing, and we need to figure out how you are going to have an economic future, that's a hard thing to be able to convince people of. But that is our party's responsibility. It's not just to win, but it's to lead. It's to lead at a moment in time where this country is going through profound change economically, technologically, demographically. And at stake is whether we're going to be a liberal democracy true to the values that our founders set, or whether we're going to revert to a parochialism and a nationalism that would make us actually unexceptional. I believe in American exceptionalism. I believe our exceptionalism is grounded in our Constitution, is grounded in our Declaration of Independence, is grounded in Lincoln's principles that we're a nation that believes in ideas and not a nation constituted in culture or blood. But to achieve that vision of America, we need to make sure every American has a stake in this new economy. We need to make sure every American and every American family and every American community can feel some sense of hope and possibility, some sense of the American dream for a new world. I believe we not only have to defeat Donald Trump, I believe we not only have to defeat Mitch McConnell, I believe we need to inspire this nation again with a sense of what America can do. And when we do that, and I know this because of people like Anusha and that next generation, when we do that, this new generation is going to usher in one of the greatest moments for our nation. And Trumpism will be a relic of the past. But it is for us as a party to help make that transition possible. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your passion. And let's go out and win in 2020.
Thank you so much. You come line up right here. Unfortunately, the microphone doesn't travel around. So go ahead. You want to start, Dave?
What the heck is going on with the DNC? Why wouldn't you want to encourage this youth that we need so much?
Dave, in the microphone.
No, you need the mic? Okay.
This is paper
All right.
primaries.
Okay, my question is, what do you think's going on with the DNC? And there's Otto. I know Otto's a good guy, but I'm pretty disappointed with my DNC for not encouraging the youth that we need to get out to inspire them to address the biggest problem we've ever faced.
Well, Dave, I agree with you. I spoke directly to Seema, who is the number 2 person at the DNC, and I said, I don't understand it. Why aren't we having a climate change debate? And I went out, actually, the Sunrise Kids were out all night in front of the DNC, and I was one of the members of Congress who went out and supported them and spoke there. And they said, well, we have all these other issues we need to debate. I said, well, the passion and the challenge of climate change is the most urgent. And I don't think just doing a climate change debate means that suddenly you have to have 10 issue debates. Let's do a climate change debate. And I don't understand it. I think it's a mistake not to have it. And we need to continue to push about what solutions are going to be for climate change and why it matters. You know, I get so frustrated when I'm in Washington that we're not doing anything. And then I come back home and I get inspired again because I was meeting someone, an entrepreneur, 2 days ago, and she's funding this company that has a plan to plant a trillion trees in a year. I don't know if it's going to work, but I said, all of the creativity and innovation that's here in Silicon Valley to try to tackle this problem, all of that, it gets suppressed in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's outrageous. And that's what we need to debate. And you know what we need to debate? Why we need to debate it is because could be a vision for jobs. Where do you think the wind blows? Where does the sun shine? A lot of it is in the heartland of this country. Wind jobs and manufacturing jobs and wind, that can power so much of the places that have been left out. We need to be able to make that case. And we need to make the case that the investment in clean technology is going to allow us to lead, is allow us to create good jobs. It's going to allow us to create jobs precisely in the places that feel left out. And I think the DNC should allow it. I'll continue to call for that.
It's fighting the Soviets. And can you give me confidence that the CIA, the FBI, and the FEC are going to be up to the task to prevent the Russians, whose economy is way smaller than even Californians, from hacking our election and creating all this fake news and disinformation?
No, I can't, unfortunately. If we're spending $717 billion in our defense budget, 737 is where they wanted. Barbara Lee and I had an amendment, by the way, to freeze defense spending to Trump's 2019 levels that were $100 billion more than where President Obama left it. And I'm not going to call out names, but we couldn't get the majority of our own party to support the freezing of defense levels at 2019 levels. And so while we're investing in things like more tanks and more airplanes and upgrading the triad for nuclear war, we're not making basic investments in cybersecurity, basic investments in our infrastructure to make sure we're not vulnerable to interference. It's absolutely absurd the priorities that we have had in protecting our security. Because I agree with you, Suds, that the election interference from Russia or someone else is a far greater threat to our own democracy than conventional warfare. And yet that's not where the funding has been directed. I am working on a bill that could be bipartisan, actually, with Kevin McCarthy, to call on the tech companies to have a consortium so that they can work with the Department of Homeland Security and identify potential bots that may be having disinformation campaigns. And I'm hopeful that that will get passed before this coming election. But I remain very, very concerned about the possibility of interference. And when you have people like Rudy Giuliani trying to welcome that interference from Ukraine, you know, this administration will stop at nothing to win. And we ought to be very clear-eyed about that.
David Wessel, and before I ask my question, I want to compliment Ro on the tremendous job that he's been doing. I want to compliment Ro on the tremendous job he's been doing. In fact, I talked with a fellow who was a Mike Honda supporter, and he said if he had a chance to do it over again, he would vote for Ro. He has healed the division in our local area because of the great job he's done. So I want to thank Ro for the great job he's been doing.
What about the DNC question?
Now my question is about housing, and my question is directed to Ro, but also Larry Klein and Mr. Prescott, Dave Cortese. I'm sorry, Dave Cortese. So we have this problem with housing, in particular in Sunnyvale, Cupertino area. At the moment, we're having the big problem with Valco. Scott Wiener got SB 35 passed. How are we going to get this housing into these areas like Cupertino and Sunnyvale?
Well, I appreciate that, David, and I appreciate your leadership on affordable housing and the local leadership here. It's one of the biggest issues, right? I mean, homelessness. How many people have noticed an increase in homelessness in our area? I mean, it's one of the biggest challenges. When Bernie Sanders was out here and we were going around, and we were just, I think, taking a walk around one of the parks in San Jose, and he was most struck by the homelessness. That was the one thing that he said, Ro, wow, I didn't realize how much of a problem of homelessness is in this community. And that is because, one, it's a legal issue. In New York, there's actually a right to shelter granted by the Constitution. We don't have that right to shelter in California law. And we don't have enough affordable housing. We haven't built enough housing. So we have a federal bill that Maxine Waters has introduced, and Elizabeth Warren has supported it in the Senate, and it would call for billions of dollars of grants to communities that they can use to build affordable housing and that they can use to expand Section 8. And I think that that is the type of federal policy that we need. Of course, Ben Carson is doing the exact opposite, taking away the fair housing laws. But one of the things we need to do is not just have a mandate on these cities, and then they ask, okay, who's going to pay for the education and who's going to pay for the infrastructure? What we need to do is actually provide the funding. And that funding is not that much. I mean, Waters' bill would be $13 billion. She calls it the End Homelessness Bill, and it literally would allow for the building of affordable housing for communities. We also need to look, I think, at creative solutions. There was a company that I was so impressed with. I met in our area, and they pay 50% of the down payment for teachers to go get homes in this area. And it turns out teachers, as would be expected, are almost no credit risk because teachers tend to be very responsible and pay, do what they say they're going to do. And yet they weren't getting loans. So we need to be more thoughtful about why is it taking a private company? Why couldn't the federal government have thought about assisting people with home mortgages if they aren't posing credit risks? So I think there are a lot of things we can be doing on this policy. And I just want to say one other point about the homelessness. I mean, it's about 70% are 65% are issues of mental illness or drug addiction or alcohol, which need wraparound services. But 35 to 40% of the homelessness are just simply people who have lost their jobs. And that is a staggering number in this community. It's something that I believe has to be the highest priority for our local officials, and at the federal level, we're going to do whatever we can to get resources.
Yeah, I'd like to Sorry. I'd like to ask what kind of issues it is possible to have bipartisanship now. I know, for example, I'm involved in epilepsy, and there seems Census Bureau is one of the Republicans who's really been really forward for epilepsy, probably because his son is epileptic. But I want to know. I'd like to know: is there any future right now for any bipartisan things that can be done?
Bruce, it's a good question. I've had 2 bills passed into law. One was to provide apprenticeships for veterans, and we were able to work with people in Tom Cotton, of all people, in the Senate, and the president signed it. The other was to modernize our websites. It turned out when I got to Washington, D.C., that some of the agencies still required fax machines for you to fax something in and didn't have the digital competency. That got passed. There's actually a fair amount of bipartisan consensus on funding Alzheimer research. Alzheimer's has become one of the most costly diseases for individuals and caregivers, and a lot of research can help with that. There's an emerging consensus where I worked with Matt Gaetz, of all people, to stop these foreign wars. And we passed, my amendment passed 251 to 170 in the House to stop a single dime going to the president if he were going to take an offensive war against Iran. And now Schumer is working to get that through in the Senate. And I've started a bipartisan war powers caucus in Congress, which says that Congress has Article 1 jurisdiction over matters of war and peace, and we shouldn't be getting into these foreign interventions. So that's some of the optimistic tone, but let me say this. I didn't realize until my second term in Congress, probably towards the end of my first term, how much in this country the American president matters. You know, yes, you have 435 members of Congress, yes, you got 100 senators, but in our country, the president sets the tone. The president gets to determine what the media talk about. The president gets to set the agenda. More than anything else, more than even the formal power, is the power to set an agenda and the power to set the tone of conversation. If this president, what I often say is, this president hasn't forced me to cast a single hard vote. I've never had to think, wow, maybe I should support the president on this because it would be good for my district. If the president wanted to, he could have. He could have put together an infrastructure bill. He could have put together a bill to expand broadband. He could have put together a bill to lower the cost of prescription drugs. There are areas in this country where we can work in a bipartisan way. This president has shown no interest in doing that.
In order. Put me in order.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll stay as long as folks still.
A little bit how we're going to unite the Democratic Party. Because, like, say, if we defeat Trump and it is not Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, then it's Joe Biden. The question is, like, are we going to have our agendas on the table, like free college, Medicare for all, and New Deal, stuff like this? Are we going to have those and implement it in a way? This is what I'm kind of like feared, that we have more differences in the Democratic Party between Justice Democrats and progressive and like corporate, like standard Democrats. Thank you.
We should have had free public college 20 years ago. Yep. We should have had, you know, back in the 1990s when we anticipated that we were moving towards a knowledge economy, and knowledge was the greatest source of economic growth. We should have then thought about, well, wouldn't it make sense to get as many people, as much education as possible? And this criticism of college as elite, the most disingenuous speech in the Republican convention was when Donald Trump Jr. got up there and said, you know what, my father really, he appreciates the greatness and the contributions of those who don't go to college, and understands that they have an equal opportunity. And coming from a family who all conveniently went to University of Pennsylvania. I mean, let's be honest with people. The more education you get, the better in an economy that requires more skills. That doesn't mean you can't have even education for the trades requires skills, digital skills. Being an electrician or a plumber today requires more technical skills than ever before. And the reality is that college-educated folks, in the height of the Great Recession's unemployment rate never went over 6%. So had we transitioned to free public college much earlier, I think we would have been in a much better shape. And I want to make this point before answering the essence of your question. I refuse to accept in any way, because it's just factually inaccurate, that we cannot afford free public college. Free public college in this country would cost $80 billion a year. $80 billion to make every public college tuition free. Well, it costs us $50 billion a year to stay in Afghanistan. Now you tell me, if we were out of Afghanistan, if we hadn't been in Afghanistan for 20 years, if we had only been in 18 years and we could get free public college education, what would make America secure? The second argument that I just want to address on this that often comes up, how many people say, okay, we don't want to make college free because we want students to have skin in the game? How many people have heard that argument before? You know? Well, the best rebuttal I had to that was the president of Ohio State. I said, Mr. President, President Drake, what do you make of that argument that young people need skin in the game to go do well? He said, that's complete nonsense. I said, why do you say that? He said, because my son and my daughter are graduates of Stanford and have PhDs, and they had no skin in the game. I paid for their entire college tuition. So how is it that 70% of people who are going and having their parents pay for college tuition manage to do just fine? They don't have skin in the game. Their parents are paying for it. This idea that we need people to have skin in the game, no, what I want them to do is be able to focus on their academics. And the idea that in 1945, when we fought for 12 years of free education, that we would think that in 2019, we also are fine just with 12 years of education, just makes no sense. So we need to continue to fight. Now you say, well, what if we elect someone who doesn't believe in that? And I would say progress in this country has always been very, very hard fought. Lyndon Johnson won in Medicare for all in the 1960s. Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1994, after he did 25 hearings with Hillary Clinton on health care, said, I guess there's only one solution. We need to strike 65 from the Medicare statute and have Medicare for all. And we're still debating that. So we have no choice. We got to continue to fight for progressive values and then take progress and not get disengaged. But we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We can't say, well, you know, Joe Biden is not going to be for free public college or for Medicare for all, which I fundamentally believe are the right values. And so, you know, we're okay with Donald Trump, who's blowing up the free world and blowing up the international systems. Donald Trump is a threat to the fundamental values of this republic.
Yes.
He's a threat to everything we stand for. And I would vote, I'd vote for, you know, I'd vote for half the Republicans over Donald Trump in this country. I would. So we have got to push for our ideals, push with passion, but realize this election is of a different character. And we've got to do whatever we can to make sure our nominee, I hope it'll be Bernie Sanders, I'm sure there are other people here who hope it'll be different people, but whoever that nominee is, you have my assurance that I will work just as hard as I'm working for Bernie Sanders. If he's the nominee, obviously I'll work just as hard for him. If it's someone else, I'll work just as hard for them. That's the only way we're going to win and defeat Donald Trump.
Oh, Dia, did you have a question? Yeah. Oh, I didn't. They were lining up. I'm sorry. Don, let me just have.
In order. In order.
Dia, come up and say your question. You were raising your hand high enough. Girl, I don't want five. I thought you were talking to me.
My arm is not as long as hers. So my question is, and it comes back to really Secretary Clinton. She used to always say, women's issues are economic issues, and economic issues are women's issues, right? So one of the things that I feel is holding a lot of young families in this area from home ownership is childcare. We have, and I know that in the 70s, under frickin' President Nixon, I even hate saying that, we were so close to passing a bill for universal childcare. Like, what happened? What happened to that political will to, like, actually help working families? And what is Congress doing about that?
It's a great question, and it's such a obvious investment that we ought to be making in universal child care in this country, in preschool education in this country. I mean, Secretary Clinton used to cite in her campaign James Henkman, who won the Nobel Prize in economics at the University of Chicago. And Henkman's studies basically showed that by the age of 5 was the most formative years for an individual's development, that you could predict a lot of their future success by the time they were 5. And so as a country, just like it makes sense to invest in free public college, what it makes sense to do is to invest in universal childcare, in early intervention with parents. So we're actually educating parents about being a parent. I don't speak about my kids often, but let me tell you, I was pretty clueless about being a parent. And in other countries, for the first 6 months, you get intensive education on nutrition, on education, about what it means to be a parent. It's not intuitive how to be a good parent. And then we ought to have a universal preschool. And over 10 years, some of the estimates is that would cost about $100 billion. But would we be a stronger country if we did that? Or if we're putting $100 billion more in our defense budget? So these are questions of values. I believe the 2 highest priorities in terms of education for our country should be childcare and preschool, and then a free public college. And we ought to be educating people from the day that they're born. And that also will free up people to work without having 60-70% of their income go into child care. So I completely agree with you, and I hope whoever our nominee is, I know Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have very bold plans on that, and I hope whoever the nominee is will adopt that.
Okay.
I was calling, I thought people were lining up, so I apologize if I wasn't calling on you.
Thank you, Jenny. No problem. So I just wanted to make a point about the Republicans passed the biggest budget-busting tax cut in history, causing the biggest deficit we've ever seen. Yep. And they are now going to say, well, now the spending of the Democrats is the cause of the deficit, so we have to get rid of all of that spending. So I think it's very important that we protect what we've got, because they're going to go after Social Security, they're going to go after Medicare, yep, and they are cutting all of the programs in the government right now. Yep. So that's something we have to protect, what we've got now.
No, that's an excellent point. And there's so many false arguments the Republicans make, it's hard to keep track of, but this is one of them. Let's be very clear, there are 3 causes of our federal deficit. 3 very simple causes, factually documented. 1, the Bush tax cuts that were to $1.6 trillion basically to the 1%. 2, the Trump tax cuts, $1.4 trillion to the 1%. And 3, our overseas wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that has given us an obligation of $6 trillion. Those are the causes of the deficit. You know how I know that? Because Bill Clinton left this country with budget surpluses. And those are the 3 things we have done to drive this nation into debt. And I've never seen a country take on debt like Donald Trump did while we were in the midst of the Obama recovery. And it's what's hamstringing the Fed today, and it's what's hamstringing our ability to have a response, because he took on debt at the time where we had an expansion instead of investing that money into job creation, and now he's restricting our ability to respond. So we need to remind people that the Republican Party has been the party of fiscal irresponsibility. They haven't made these investments. And we need to be very clear about what will make Social Security solvent for the next 50 years, and that is scrapping the cap and making sure that people are paying tax over $250,000 on their Social Security income, and that will make Social Security solvent and will allow us to increase benefits. So I appreciate you raising those points.
We're coming to the end, so we're going to do your last, I think.
Full disclosure here, I'm an independent, not a Republican or Democrat, but I saw somebody post something on my Facebook page. This is a lighter topic. On broadband, we're way behind the rest of the world. I know you have ideas for that. What will you do once you have the numbers to make that better?
Tim, I appreciate that. China is able to hook up, they have a plan to put, within the next 5 years, 98% of China will be hooked up to high-speed internet. A $22 billion investment there. If they can do it, it is shameful that we can't have high-speed internet in every part of America. For $40 billion, we could do that in the next year. If you care, as the president claims to care, I mean, rhetorically, about forgotten Americans in rural America. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things you could do is give them high-speed, affordable internet. So they would have more opportunities for education, more opportunities for jobs across the country, across the world, while staying in their communities. $40 billion, again, to put that in perspective, is 1 year in Afghanistan. You know, President Carter recently gave a speech. Trump called him up and he said, you know, I'm concerned that we may be losing to China. And President Carter, being as gracious as he is, didn't go off on Trump. He said, well, Mr. President, China hasn't been in a war since 1979. They've built 18,000 miles of high-speed rail. They're putting monies in colleges and universities. They're putting money in broadband. Why are we not making those investments? And you know what? China is just copying what the United States used to do. That was our strategy to grow, to build those kind of investments and then match that with research universities in the private sector. So I appreciate you raising that. I will tell you this, if you go into rural communities, it is the #1 issue. I was shocked because I thought, okay, Silicon Valley, they said, oh, you can't go talking about technology in other parts of the country. They get it. People get it. And that's something that the Democratic Party needs to talk about. Yep. You know, we need to talk about, Donald Trump is promising people the past. We've got to be visionary in talking about the new industries, new jobs, and bringing the future to folks. We've got to get them bought in to the future.
All right, thank you.
It was very deferential to speak board with the timing. I wanted to also be deferential to Nadler in terms of the court cases where he thought he would have the strongest case. Nadler, I spoke to him before leaving. He believes that the time is now, and I trust his judgment, and so I strongly support his call for a formal impeachment inquiry, and I expect us to do that starting in the fall, and we'll continue to be a voice for that. So I appreciate that, Joe. I appreciate the advocacy from the community.
Thank you, Ro. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Give him a round of applause. We also, do you want to come up?
Thank you very much. A brief introduction. My name is Kenson Chu. I'm currently serving on the third term of the State Assembly representing San Jose, Milpitas, Santa Clara, Fremont, and Newark. And next year, 2020 March, I want to bring my experience from 20 decades of services in the community and come home to run for supervisor. I just wanted to say I'm very honored to receive the endorsement from Congressman Ro Khanna, and also want to thank him and his office for doing a great job working with my assembly office, resolving many of our constitutional issues. As you may know, just earlier this year, there's a nonpartisan group have rated all 535 congressmen's office, and Ro's office got the top rating. So we should want to take this opportunity to also thank Congressman Khanna for his services. I have about 20 years public services in Santa Clara County, and I'm 100% voting record with Equity California, and 100% with Sierra Club, 100% with other civil liberty group, and I would just encourage you to check my record and consider Kenson Chu for the supervisor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon, Democrats. Woo! So we just had two very important meetings. The Democratic National Committee just met in San Francisco. I spent 3 days there. We fought really hard regarding these, really is the existential issue that we need to work on for climate change. We have a lot of very young folks coming from Sunrise Movement from all around the country that came out. It was disheartening that the DNC was not listening and the vote did not came through 222 to 132. Of course, me and most of the California delegation voted to have this climate change debate. But again, debate is just one thing. What we want to do is harvest the energy and the passion of our younger generation to make sure that they're out working, getting out the votes, making sure that climate change is the existential issue. There's going to be forum. The DNC is sponsoring that with CNN in late September on this climate change. We need to make sure this forum that's being presented, as we broadcasted, will have as much attention and viewership as possible to educate the rest of our country how important this issue is. Because certainly this is not the issue that the Republican Party cares about, and this is absolutely an issue, not just Democrats, that we human beings should care about. So again, I just want to raise that issue. We also have the e-board meeting, SEC board meeting today, right now at the Doubletree Hotel. We just finished today, and certainly we have done much better here in California. And again, I don't have to say any more about Donald Trump, but I would say one thing. In order to keep up with all the good work we've done, T.J. Cox and those congressmen who just got in the last cycle are those we need to focus on putting the resources, money, time to make sure they get reelected. And also the Senate is where it matters, because even we change the White House, without the proper Senate, we're not able to put the judges that we need. And we will have years to repair the damages that we have suffered from this administration. And as I was quoted, I think they said was, we have had 4 years of Trump. We might be able to survive that. 8 years of it, we won't. So we got to give it all this time around to make sure that Trump is out for good. Thank you very much, Democrats.
We have one more, Sally Beaver.
Good afternoon, Democrats. Is everyone having a good picnic today? Yeah! I love being out here by these glistening oak trees and the beautiful lake, and it's such a great reminder of how lucky we are to live in this area. And I am running for state senate. The District 13 is on the peninsula, and it pretty much takes in the entire peninsula from Sunnyvale all the way up almost to San Francisco, and from the ocean to the bay. So it's a pretty big district geographically. We're working on getting out to all the different parts of the district and meeting with folks everywhere. And the way that I feel about campaigning is that it's kind of like a wonderful treasure hunt, because you're just meeting people and finding new places, finding, for me, great ice cream all over this district. So it's a really good opportunity. And I want to have a chance to talk with everyone here as things are evolving and get you involved in your own way within our campaign. I served in the State Assembly for 3 terms, and I actually found it to be a very productive place to be. Environmentally, you can do a lot of great work at the state level. In terms of education, you can do a lot of great work, and you're impacting 40 million people. And whatever happens in California in terms of progressive change gets transplanted to eventually, hopefully, 50 other states. So again, I want to thank you so much. It matters more now than ever to be a Democrat. And 2020 is absolutely our year. We have to put everything into it. It's an unprecedented time for our country to make a change and to make a statement in the biggest way possible. And I really felt Ro's words so much when he talked about we can't just be against everything, but we have to articulate a vision of what we're for. And for me, what I'm the most clearly for is the policy infrastructure in terms of caring for people that we need to have. We have to rebuild a safety net for everybody in our community and take care of people and empower them so that they can make their own lives better. And that's what I'm going to be working towards in Sacramento, and I want to work with each of you every single day to do that. So thank you so much for having me here. And the last thing I want to say is, I noticed that there's some signs on the trees over there that the lake is closed today. And I don't know what's going on with this lake right now. It might be the blue-green algae that can come up at this time of year. And you got to watch to keep your dog away from still water. But nearly every beach in California right now, nearly every river in California right now is unhealthy to swim in and is affected by what we call fecal coliform. And we've got to clean up our waterways in California. We have to be the example of an outstanding ecological state and show people that it can happen here, and we're going to do that in the next 4 years. So thank you so much.
that's it, unless we have anyone else that is running for office. Oh, you are? Is that okay? You can say it. Keep it short, but go ahead. We don't.
I just want to be full disclosure.
Yeah.
You're an independent.
You're independent. So yeah, it's fine. What are you ready for? Or I guess you're going to tell us.
My name is Tim Gildersleeve. I self-identify as a follower of Jesus Christ. My name is Tim Gildersleeve. I self-identify as a follower of Jesus Christ, and I'm running for Senate District 15. I understand that this is a Democratic club, and I totally understand that I'm an independent. So one issue I just want to bring up here that I'm concerned about is civics in California. I believe that we have to interject civics in California as important as science, math, technology, and English. That's just something I would like to see if I were in the state Senate. Thank you.
All right, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. Art, do you have any closing statements? Is that a yes? Oh, we have a raffle.
Really good chance of winning. So check your numbers. Number one is get somebody to pick something. The last four digits are what? It's a quadrant.
It'll be easier if you do it out loud.
Yeah, okay. All right, the last four digits are 4076. Some wine, 4076. Vintage 2012 quadrant, Saya Blend, Paseo Robles. Vintage 2012 wine, anybody?
All right.
4076. No?
No? Okay, let's pick another
All
one.
right, we're going, not here, you can't win.
Okay, try this.
All right, how about 4004? Anybody with 4004?
All right.
All right, we'll try again.
We should have people that got it later, right?
4046.
4046.
4046. We got a winner where? All right. All right, Patrick.
All right.
All right, we got another wine coming up. Pick another number. This one is a 2017 vintage. Bordeaux. 4005. 4005. Anybody? Going once, going twice. Let's pick another one. $4008. 4008. Anyone? Okay, we have enough.
If you did a double pick.
4068. 4068 for some wine.
Yeah, we got a winner.
We got a winner. All right.
And that's the Bordeaux?
That's the Bordeaux.
You got it. Thank you very much.
All right. Next, we got a SanDisk Cruiser Gator USB flash drive. 8 gigabyte.
That's a lot of bytes.
4070. 4070.
Hey! Double winner.
All right, a double winner there. Excellent. 4062, and it's another SanDisk Extreme Pro SDHC UHS camera card, 8 gigabyte. It's a camera card, SanDisk camera card. Okay. Number is 4062. Anybody? Okay, that's gone. How about 4061?
Nope.
4061. No. Okay. 4060.
Oh, that you?
Yes, that's her.
Yes, you got a winner.
Oh, we got a winner over here. 4060. Right there.
Okay. Pick one out of here.
Okay.
Two, actually.
And then we have a flash drive, a SanDisk Cruiser USB 2.0 flash drive, 4 gigabyte. 4065. Anybody? 4065, a flash drive? All right, we got a winner. The next prize is a Nancy Pelosi large flyer from California State Convention 2019.
All right.
Yes. So this is from the state convention. 4049. All right. Excellent. And
Perfect for the refrigerator.
oh, we got a Galvin Newsom flyer from the California State Convention 2019. Galvin Newsom.
We'll get it.
4032. Four zero 4032. Anybody? How about 4042? Okay. Stronger Together. This was from the 2016 National Convention. I was a delegate there. This is one of those flyers they had you hold up. 4033. Four zero two nine. Wait, you got 4033? All right, excellent.
Get together.
Okay. All right, we got some wine coming here for 4029.
What is it?
It's the let's see, it's a. I'm sorry. Daman Shadon, yes. Champagne. 4029. Anybody? 4029? No. Okay, how about 4006?
Nice and cold.
It's nice and cold wine. 4073. Champagne. 4039.
We should just put the ticket.
Get ready to drink.
Rid of a man.
Somebody, oh, there we go. We got a winner. All right, Suds. Congratulations.
We'll help you bring that.
Let's see. Do you want to just jump to some more wines? All right, let's go to some more wines here. We got Club Sauvignon, number 15. So we're going to jump to another wine, number 15. Close Club Sauvignon. This is vintage 2013. It was a good year for wine, right? 4034.
It's also vegan.
It's a vegan wine. 4014. 4052. So I heard somebody say so close. 4011. 4036. 4054. All right, there we go.
All right.
It took a while.
Nice. Looks good.
Okay, let's see, do we have another one?
Sauvignon Blanc.
Is that part of that one? That's part of the grand prize,
Just
right?
stay quiet for just a minute.
Yeah, okay, all right, so this we're going to give out, this is the grand prize one. It includes the wine, a San Francisco Flyers t-shirt, extra large, and a button that's an Obama 08 for president. So it's a combination of wine and it's a combination of tech and sports, everything. And clothing. 4026. 4026.
Yay!
All right, we got a winner. Okay. I think that's a wrap. I want to again thank everybody for coming out today. One last thing. There is a lot of extra food. Okay, if you could please go over there and take some home because we have extra. Okay, so please take some home. I think we have extra pretty much everything, right? Every extra Yeah, we have extra ribs, chicken, you name it. So take a plate, and I don't know whether or not they have boxes, but we'll have to check on that.